So my name's Elliot Deutsch. As you know, if you've been following my channel, I don't do these kind of videos very often. But I've been asked over and over again recently how I'm able to get the band to sound so realistic in our virtual performances. This is kind of a new medium. I'm by no means a world expert at this, but I think I have seen some really good success, and I've been following a lot of other virtual big bands. I love it. If I'm going to do it, I love watching other ones, but they don't all have the same level of success as far as creating a performance that feels like it could have been recorded together in the room. So I've been asked over and over again how I'm able to do this. I'm sure this isn't the only way to get there, but this is the way that I do it. And hopefully, I mean, we're all in this pandemic together, which is keeping us from being able to perform together. As a trumpeter, I don't know when the next time I'm going to be able to sit in front of on the bandstand with my fellow musicians and make music together. So this is the best we have right now. I just kind of want to share my methods to getting the most realistic performance possible. I'm imagining that a lot of band directors are going to be trying to do this with their school bands. This is the first time, and I wish you luck. I mean, this is very possible to do. My methods are geared, you know, I have a professional band, and I am a composer. So those definitely play into my methods a little bit, but I think most of what I do can be applied at any level. If you have any success with this, I really want to hear from anyone. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section and I'll get back to you really quickly. I've done 4 of these videos so far. We have a 5th one in the works, and we're just going to keep doing it as long as the pandemic continues. So that said, let's get into how it actually works. This video is focusing on how to record the band to get the best possible performance together. There are lots of tutorials on how to make split-screen videos that are great. I'll put a couple of links in the description of my favorites. I am no means an expert videographer. I've been learning as I go. I think I've had pretty good success, but there are better people at that than me. Okay, so before we even get into people recording their parts, let's talk about notation. You've got to imagine we're going to have a bunch of people or students recording separately in their own situations. If you're a group that plays together a lot already, this might not be as big of a deal because you already can anticipate how the other musicians are going to play specific passages. I'm talking about interpretation. A lot of music, especially jazz band music, which is my specialty, leaves a lot to interpretation. So when you're going to do a remote performance, you've got to really get as much of this into the music as possible. So if it's a piece that you wrote, I suggest going through, page by page on Sibelius or Finale or whatever you use, and make sure that everything that should have an articulation does. So if it's a swing feel piece, make sure that all of the quarter notes are articulated. So either a staccato or a marcato or a tenuto marking, or it's under a slur, articulation. Then make sure that everything, that the form is well indicated. So a lot of jazz band pieces have open solo sections. So make sure that that's indicated exactly what you want. So if you want 2 soloists, each of them taking 2 times background second time, say it. Write it on all the parts. Instead of saying open backgrounds on cue, say 4 times backgrounds second time and 4th time. If you're doing a tenor solo first, write solo first. And then on the trombone solo or whatever's next goes solo 3rd and 4th times. So just make sure that everything's super, super clear. The other thing that's important to iron out are fermatas. So if you have a fermata, which is pretty common, especially on ending notes, you would normally hold the last note and then cut the band off. But you're not going to be able to do that for obvious reasons. So the best thing to do usually is to just decide exactly how many beats it's going to be. And if you're lucky enough to be playing a piece that doesn't retard at the end, you can literally count out. Like if you count it to 7 beats, have a whole note tied to a dotted half note with the marking off on 4. So I would make that as unambiguous as possible. If you've got a caesura, just decide exactly how many beats it is. Maybe make it a 5/4 bar with a quarter rest for the entire band. This might make it look a little bit more difficult to read, but it's going to make it a lot easier to record when people aren't in the same room together. All right, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. The way that I actually record, you have to think about what it's like to actually play in a jazz ensemble. There is a hierarchy for interpretation. So, as a trumpeter, I usually played a section part. Sometimes I played lead, but usually I was playing in the section when I was in college or in various bands. I'm usually in the section. So I know as a section player to listen up to my lead player. If they're playing this, hit a little bit longer than you'd expect, you go with them. Or the lengths of falls, just, everything. Exactly how loud or how soft. They follow their lead players for interpretation. So by extension, you basically want the lead players to record before the section players. So now let's go backwards from that. First trombone and the first alto both listen up to the lead trumpet. That's sort of the lead instrument for the band. So unless you've got an interesting, arrangement that has somebody else playing lead for the band, you probably want the lead trumpet to record before the lead alto and the lead trombone. Then let's take that a step further. The lead trumpet gets their interpretation from the rhythm section. So what I do when I record the band is I have the drummer record first, then the bass player, then the rest of the rhythm section and lead trumpet. Then once I have all that done, then we add on the other lead players, then we add the section players below, and then the last thing is the soloists. With that in mind, let's talk about how we actually do it. So let's imagine for a second that you're that drummer recording first. What do you actually record to? If you just give them a tempo and expect them to somehow make all the hits, I don't know a pro drummer that's going to sound particularly natural doing that. So what I've been doing is, before I even send anything out to be recorded, I'm in Sibelius making all the adjustments to the articulation and getting rid of fermatas and caesuras and all that kind of stuff. Then I'm literally notating an entire bass part, like a way that you would never do for a high school band and up. I'm writing every single note as if the bass player is going to read it, honestly, because then Sibelius will be able to play it back, which we're going to get to. I also usually put in some very basic piano comping, notated out fully during solo sections. In Sibelius, there's a function to export a MIDI file, and I'm sure it's in Finale and Dorico. Make sure you export it as MIDI Type 1. If it does that, it'll have all the information when you bring it into Logic or Pro Tools or whatever you use to make your MIDI file. I think GarageBand will even do this too. It's going to have all the tracks separated. You're going to have to clean it up a little bit. As you can see, the MIDI file opens into Logic pretty well. The saxophones, trumpets, trombones are all in score order and have the appropriate icons. Bass trombone is grand piano, which we can fix easily. The bass is playing an octave up, which is also easy to remedy. We're going to be deleting the drums anyway, so don't worry about there not being anything there. At this point, I'll construct a click track. Depending on the tempo of the piece, I'll do 2 measures or 4 measures of click in front. If it's fast, I'll do 4, and if it's medium or slower, I'll usually do 2 measures of click in front. I make a virtual drum track, and then either quarter notes or half notes, depending again on how fast the tempo is, I'll just use a cowbell sound. You want it to be something loud that the band, anyone that's recording along with the MIDI, is going to be able to hear through the MIDI. So it's got to be loud. And a lot of times I'll put compression on that MIDI track and just crank it a little bit so that the drummer will be able to hear it in their headphones regardless of how loud everything else gets. It's not particularly pleasant to listen to, but it gets the job done. Then I export it as an MP3 and send it to the drummer, along with a PDF of their part. Then the drummer records along to that track. And the reason that we put the click in the track like that is just we don't know what setup each of the musicians is going to have. If I was sending this to a professional recording studio, I might not put a click at all because their software is going to sync up with it properly and they can control what kind of click they want and how loud they want it to be and make those decisions themselves. But in in this sort of pandemic situation, you have a lot of people, a lot of great musicians that are not also recording engineers. I mean, that's a serious specialty. So they might not have invested in a program like Logic or DP or Pro Tools, and they might not have the capability of setting up their own click. So it's a lot easier just to know that it's going to be right. I've put it in the track. And if they want to do their own click over that click, that's okay. And if they request a version of it without a click, I'm happy to send it to them as well. So I create this MIDI. It's all the horns and bass and piano, and no drums, but a very loud click. And I send it to the drummer, and they record along to it. And they take a video of themselves while they're recording, for video reasons. and they send me back their track. Then I take that drum track, plop it into Logic, get the level so that it sounds more or less in balance with the MIDI horns, and then I mute the MIDI bass, print out a new MP3 of it, send it off to the bass player, and they do the same thing. Then I add in the bass part, and hopefully you can hear this developing. I put the bass part in, then I usually print out a version of that for the guitarist and the lead trumpet. I make another version of it without the MIDI piano to send to the pianist. And then at that point, when I get back a lead trumpet part, then I send it to first trombone and first alto. Then as I'm getting parts back, I add them in. Once I've gotten a lead player in each section, generally I mute all of the MIDI. The point of the MIDI was to give people a reference as to when figures happen or they don't. It removes a lot of ambiguity. But at that point, there is no ambiguity, so you don't need it anymore. And honestly, it's pretty unpleasant to record along to this MIDI. It's a necessary evil of getting a good recording like this. So at this point, once you've gotten all the tracks back, I usually go in and I clean it up a little bit. And you can do edits yourself in a program like Logic or even GarageBand, like where I'll just go and mute certain, if there's a mistake, usually if there's 17 or 18 horns and you mute one of them, it's not a big deal. If there are any like major mistakes or things that just don't line up or people miss wrong notes, send it back to them and have them record it again. If they're savvy enough, they can just do punch-ins on their own part. But if not, it just doesn't take that long to record through a 4-minute big band chart. Okay, at that point, once I've got everything there, I print out a version with all the instruments and I send it off to the soloist. I think probably the easiest way to do it is to layer on the solos at the end. What's important, by the way, when you're getting a solo back, is make sure that they export the stem with a lot of blank space so that it lines up with the beginning of the track. Or they can send the stem and also print a demo, basically with the whole band plus their solo, just so you get their solo lined up just right. I had a horror story with a solo that I had recorded, and I lined it up incorrectly, and we had to actually take the video down from YouTube, recut the video to the solo lined up properly. It sounded so much better. The issue was the solo sounded good out of alignment because the soloist was so strong, but once we had nudged it forward a few milliseconds, just everything felt a little more natural, and it was my fault. But a good way around it is to have the person that recorded the solo send you back an actual recording of them playing the solo over the track, just as a reference. At this point, you've got all of the audio tracks. So the next thing that has to be done is it has to get mixed. And honestly, I am not a good mixer. I've tried, but I'm also not a good trombonist. So I would send my trombone one part to be recorded by a trombone specialist, why would I try to mix it? Because let's be honest, mixing isn't something you're going to learn how to do from watching a YouTube video. But by following all these steps, you should have everything you need to send to your mix engineer so that they can do a really good job with what they get. A couple of things that people get hung up on that you probably shouldn't worry about are audio bit rates, types of microphones people use. I'm recording this video on this SM57. I don't generally do videos where I'm talking. So this is what I use to record trumpet. It sounds fine, honestly. Does it sound as good as something fancier? No, but if you're trying to get the best possible sound you can on a budget, get one of these guys. This thing was like $40 on Amazon. Makes a big difference as to reducing the room noise that you're probably hearing right now. Good luck. I hope that this helped. If you have any follow-up questions, I might make a follow-up video if I get enough questions. But in the meantime, please put your questions down below in the comment section. Feel free to send me an email. Go to my website at pandemoniumbigband.com. Definitely click the subscribe button and watch our videos. I've watched yours. Watch mine.